Welcome to the Power of Your Voice podcast with your host, Johnny Gorky. You have the power to overcome challenges and fears. Let my voice and the voice of many others show you how to transform these challenges into opportunities. To learn more about future podcasts and read episode show notes, check out my website at www.thepowerofyourvoice.com.
This is episode 14, and today's guest is Kristina Campbell. Kristina is a sexuality coach and pleasure guide inspired to help women cultivate their authentic sexuality as a means to healing, wholeness, and connection with spirit. She has healed her own childhood and sexual trauma through a multi-disciplinary approach, including therapy, energy work, sacred sexual practices, and authentic communication. Kristina is a certified life coach, certified NLP Master, and Certified Hypnosis Practitioner. Welcome to the Power of Your Voice podcast. So today I have the pleasure with Kristina. Yeah. So Kristina, what was your childhood like and how did you overcome intense bullying as a child?
Well, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And we're just jumping right into this topic. And I'm just super excited to be here on the Power of Your Voice, because really, truly freeing your voice and becoming fully expressed in whatever your experience has been in life is absolutely foundational for you to grow and to expand yourself and to be on your journey of healing, right? We need to express ourselves fully no matter what our past is, no matter what we want in our future, no matter what our today is. So my childhood, it was fraught with a whole bunch of dysfunction, just like many of other people across the world of having dysfunctional and abusive childhoods. And there was some extreme bullying that I really encountered in my elementary years, mostly. My brother, my parents divorced when I was 5, and my brother was about 7.5. And my brother took that divorce, I think, a little bit harder than I did. And he kind of like puffed up his chest a little bit when we went to elementary school. And suddenly he was like the marked kid to be extremely bullied. And I was Jason Blake's little sister. And so I was bullied as well. I mean, when I was 8 years old, I walked onto the bus and a 6th grader laid down in the bus bench. And as I walked by, she kicked me in the face. Damn. And I had my hair cut. I had gum put in my hair. I was spit on. I was bullied and kicked out of the group. I mean, I really only had one friend. My brother had really, no friends. He was beat up multiple times. I mean, it was extreme. It was like a movie. It was like a movie, it's like one of those movie scenes that you see, but it was really our experience. As kids, we were really bullied. And I think it took many years to get over that, because I never felt like I belonged. I didn't have, an experience of belonging. And around 5th grade, the district lines for schools changed. And the one girl that I had been really close with, we moved to the same school, but she was in a different class. And she ended up being in a class with all the popular girls. And they basically told her that I was not allowed into the group of popular girls. And so she had to make this choice between being in that group or accepting me as a friend. And I was kind of cut off. And from there on, I really, I searched for belonging, and sadly it ended up with me falling into a crowd of people that were not so savory and doing drugs at a really young age and things like that. But as far as overcoming extreme bullying, I don't really think that happened until I was in my 20s and I got my real footing as to who I am, and really getting over a lot of the stories and experiences of my childhood. But getting through the bullying, I'm just so grateful. I remember I wanted to commit suicide when I was about 8 years old. I wrote a note to my mother. I pushed the dresser to the door to so that nobody could get in. I put the note underneath the door, and I had this small little pocket knife, and I took the pocket knife and I tried to slit my wrist, but it was so dull that it like wouldn't even cut the skin. So I was like sharpening it on the tracks of the closet door, trying to sharpen the knife, and I couldn't get it sharp enough to do anything. So I mean, it's not a laughing matter, but it's like, you know, as an 8-year-old, it's like, that's what I was so desperate. So I was like, I gotta move this dresser now out of the way so I can get this note so that my mom doesn't find it and I don't get like in trouble for something. But I remember being a really lonely and extremely, I was really sad. I was a sad and lonely kid because of never feeling like I belonged anywhere. And that lack of belonging made me do things that, you know, I think a lot of kids do, sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of stuff, to find a place to belong when I was a teenager. And I'm just grateful that I got out of all of that alive, to tell you the truth.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank God the knife wasn't sharp. Oh my God.
Thank
That
God
is.
the knife was sharp.
Yeah, well, so speaking of drugs, so, you know, back when you were 14 years old, you were superly heavily involved in heavy drugs. And thank God, I mean, you're alive, because I mean, you know, I've even had friends, you know, like one of my good friends, his brother, he once tried, I don't even know what it was, maybe it was like coke or something, and it like literally completely destroyed his life, and he only did it once. So, you know, for anybody who's listening to this episode, I mean, this is so extremely powerful, and this could literally change someone's life. How are you able to overcome your drug addiction?
So I started smoking weed and drinking a little bit of beer when I was about like 14. Yeah, I was 14. It was all the same year. So it was like the summer between 8th grade and high school, 9th grade. Now we'd steal a beer from my friend's father, and he smoked weed, and we would like steal a little bit. And we made it was a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine who were very close at the time, and we made this plan that we wanted to try something harder. So we actually went on a mission and like seeked this out. And there was a girl in my gym class in high school, and I was like, she's like a bad kid. I knew she could probably get access to something, and she had access to meth. And so I brought some money to school. She got it. I got it from her. And this girlfriend and I tried it, and she didn't like it, and I did.
14
And
years old?
14 years old.
Wow.
And that's when I started to hang out with this girl that I got it from, and that group of kids who honestly are, the majority of them have been to jail, have had their kids taken away. I mean, my high school boyfriend died of an overdose, you know, he, not then, but just in the last few years, because he was still a drug addict. So I went on years of doing meth, cocaine, heroin, you know, all sorts of hallucinogenics, mushrooms and acid, and smoking lots of weed and alcohol. And what was my situation was really, I think, who knows if it's similar to others. I've never heard anybody else describe it in this way, but in this deep part of myself, I knew that I did not belong there, that I absolutely did not belong with these people that were, you know, doing these heavy drugs. I was doing it and I wanted to do it, but I also knew somewhere deep inside myself that there was more for me in life. And I, you know, as a young kid, my family life was so chaotic that I got the majority of my self-worth from being really good in school. And so I went into the honors program when I was in the 3rd grade. And so I was in honors math and honors reading, and I was always like almost nearly a straight A student. I got a B here and there. But when I went into high school and I started messing around with drugs, I was in all of the honors classes, and I quickly saw all my friends that were doing drugs that were not in the honors classes. Their homework was like so much easier. So I went and I told my mom, I can't do it. It's too hard. I can't be in AP English. And so I went out of the honors classes and into the normal classes. And it was so extremely easy for me that I got straight A's, and I had a job, and I was doing drugs all the time. I was able to juggle all of it and have the mask for my mom. So my mom had no idea. My mother had no idea.
Dang. That is something. And, you know, how do you think things would have worked out if have you not used drugs and you would have stayed in those AP classes?
You know, to tell you the truth, I think about that a lot. I wonder how it would have been, because I know that I really feel that it affected my brain function and my level of like acuity and clarity. And I think that I would have been exposed to a lot more ambitious kids that were around me and a lot more high level thinking at that age. I did end up going to college, and that was actually my saving grace, that I always got good grades. And so my mom was like, look, you're the one who says you want to go to college. You're the one who says you want to have this great life, and you're not making choices that are lining up with that. And luckily, because I got good grades, I got a few grants and a few scholarships, and I left school. I left my hometown to go to college. And that's when I met a whole new group of people and totally opened my eyes to a whole new life. And there was no hard drugs, and that's not what they were doing. And so I was just like a normal college kid, smoking a little bit of weed and drinking some alcohol and hanging out. And that was basically it for me. So, and I mean, I had a big intervention when I was at 18 years old. I was doing a lot of cocaine, and a really good friend of mine came and told my mother, and there was this big old intervention around my drug use as well. I also got a DUI. I crashed my car and got a DUI when I was 17 years old. And so there was a lot of things that kind of happened all at the same period of time that had me have an awakening of like, I am making these horrible choices, that if I continue making these kinds of choices, there was either like, you know, continue doing that, or I applied for college and I got in and I left town. And that was the changing point for me. I was really super grateful.
That's incredible. I mean, and that's the thing, like school can really shift a person, completely change their life. Education is so incredibly important. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, so how did you overcome your toxic marriages, verbal abuse, body shame, and sexual trauma? So, and basically you transformed these wounds into your biggest gift.
So as a child, my father was in the pornography industry. It was a family business. He was not a porn actor. They owned stores. My grandfather and him owned porn stores. And I was overexposed to, you know, pornographic material. And honestly, you know, I used to think that my experience as a child was really atypical, but I would surmise to say that it's probably pretty similar to what a lot of kids and millennials have experienced with access to pornography on the internet these days. I was exposed at a really young age, and multiple things happened. We don't need to get into all of the stories of my childhood, but I had you know, sexual trauma and abandonment, and a toxic marriage between my mother and my stepfather, and my father and my stepmother, both of them terrible marriages, and experiencing the physical abuse of my brother. I was never physically abused, but my brother was. And it was just a really unsafe childhood. And with being exposed to all that pornographic material and just social conditioning in general for women to believe that like your body is your worth, your sexuality is your worth, like if you can get a man and attract a man and all of that. And so I played all into that. And when I was 20 years old and I was in college, I actually had a dental bill that I couldn't pay, and I had an opportunity to become a stripper. And so I did at age 20. It was pretty like, you know, it wasn't that far of a leap for me since, you know, my father had been in the porn industry. It was like, oh yeah, I could do that. And so I went and I became a stripper, and I did that for 7 years actually. And there's part of it that was really liberating for me to experience the power of the female form and the power of female sexuality. And a lot of it also was really, you know, abusive and unsavory situations and circumstances that happened at that time. And what happened was I thought that I was totally, completely sexually liberated, right? I could take my clothes off in front of groups of men, and like it didn't, you know, I thought that I didn't have any sexual inhibitions. But when I got into my relationship with my partner, a man that is now my husband, we've been together for 14 years, quickly, like within that first year, you know, after all of like the hormones of first meeting each other and all that stuff wears off, I really sexually shut down. And it was, a combination of social conditioning, of all of my experiences of trauma as a child, and all of the performing of my sexuality. I realized that I had always been performing my sexuality, not just, as a sex worker and stripper, but also, at all of my first sexual experiences were a performance. I was trying to be what I thought I needed to be in order to get and retain love and acceptance. And so I really shut down, and it really hurt my marriage. For many years we were struggling. That was our biggest issue, was sex and me being extremely shut down. And so I did a lot of work on my sexuality. I did therapy and sexual healing practices and communication with my partner, and we did couples therapy, and I was able to break free of all of my sexual shame and what I should be and what my body should look like and what I should sound like, and what I should like and want and be in the bedroom. And through that process of healing, I really got to know myself on a level that I never have before, all through the process of really owning my voice in the bedroom, really saying, like, this is my truth. This is what I want and don't want. And this is what I'm willing to try. And actually vocalizing, actually freeing my voice. And when I went to therapy when I was 24 years old, there was this really big thing around my voice. I had never said my truth as a child. I had been totally silenced in order to stay safe. And I felt like I needed to be invisible. And there was a lot of processing around actually reclaiming my voice and opening up the throat. And she suggested that I go and see a singing teacher. And so I did vocal training for a couple of years, once a week, with this woman who honestly was one of the most like spiritual times of my life, was when I was really in the physical process of opening up my voice and sounding and not like judging what my voice sounded like. I'm not some amazing singer, it was like, but getting away from judging the sounds that were coming out of my body and allowing that energy to move through so that I could reclaim not just my voice on a physical sense, but my truth on a spiritual level, on a human level, on just of my own experience in life, and actually say it. And so going through this process of healing and reclaiming my voice, and then going out in the world and saying, I want to help other women do this same thing, to reclaim their bodies, to reclaim their truth, to reclaim their voice, and really say it out into the world. These are the first times that I was like telling the world, this is my truth. And for so long, I feared that if I told my truth, I would really hurt my father. And I had to really just come to the knowing that my path and my healing and my journey is mine.
Yes.
And if my truth hurts him, that's part of his journey and his path. But I can't silence myself and silence my truth for fear of hurting somebody else, because that actually, it only hurts me. And it actually eventually hurts all of those people that are around me that love me and then really can't access me because I'm silencing myself.
Exactly. So I was just thinking, so for any lady or even guys as well who are thinking, maybe I'll become a stripper because, I can make tons of money and all that kind of stuff. Because I mean, I've heard people making a lot of money. Like, for anyone who's listening, who's thinking about even getting into the industry, or who is stuck in the industry, what's some really good suggestions, advice that you would give to them? Like, how can they get out? Because after a while, you get stuck, you get comfortable. Like, my gosh, you're making thousands and thousands of dollars, probably a week. And it's like, hey, if you didn't go to college, you're probably not going to be able to make that money, at least right away.
Yeah, no, that is actually a very complex cycle of getting used to the amount of money that you can make from being a stripper in the porn industry, or even, prostituting, escorting, and feeling stuck in that industry, and also feeling marred. feeling like you can't go out and do anything else, because let's say you've been doing it for 5 years or 7, 8, 9, or 10 years or whatever. What is on your resume when you go and look for another job? Are you going to put that on your resume, or are you going to have nothing on your resume? So it is really hard to get out of the industry. And I'm really lucky because I ended up getting an apprenticeship and actually building my skills to do another profession during the day when I was still working at night. And I had also had a partner that helped me transition. He supported me as I got out of the industry. But I'm not 100% against, a woman using her body and her power and her sexuality to make money, or a man for that matter. But there is a lot of danger in the industry because there are a lot of unsavory things that happen, and you get propositioned, and you have to be powerful enough to really know your boundaries and know your value. And the porn industry in and of itself is just really deeply connected with sex trafficking industry. So I'm not a huge fan of that. But if I had any advice for somebody who's interested in getting into the industry, I'd really look at like, what is it that you're really, really wanting? Are you desperate for money? You're not going to be able to do it forever, right? So what is the skill that you're actually needing in order to get out of it? Because it can actually be an awesome bridge. I mean, I knew some amazing women and mothers that were going to school, getting their masters, getting their PhDs, and supporting their children and dancing a couple of nights a week. So it's not something that has just got this black mark on it as like this terrible thing to do with your life. It's actually an amazing way to support yourself, to get yourself into a better position in life. So it's not something that I'm totally against, but you do have to be really careful. You're putting yourself in a situation where, abusive things can happen. You need to be really clear and know that this is what you are risking when you do those things.
Thank you for that advice. So going through all these things you've gone through your childhood, especially with your father, how did you learn to forgive? Because forgiveness is so incredibly important for us.
For a long time in my healing journey, I wanted my father to admit the things that he had done. I wanted him to have his own awakening in life. I wanted him to see his own value and do his own healing he had a horrible childhood. And there was a point when I wrote in this letter when I was in therapy when I was around 24 years old, and I never thought that he would call me afterwards, because I basically told him I will no longer be a silent accomplice to all the abuse. I thought he would never call me, but he did. He did call me, and we had this conversation where I wanted him to admit, I wanted him to claim and state, yes, I did these things. And he didn't. He just said, look, I did the best I could. And there was a long period of time that I was really angry about that. And then through the next, layer of my healing, I came to this understanding that he did do the best he could. And that him going on his path of healing and reaching his potential in life had nothing to do with me going on my journey and claiming my truth and my power and accessing my potential as a human in this life. And so in that realization, in that letting go, I realized that I could forgive him, because he had a terrible childhood. Because truly on the deepest level, we us humans, we are so extremely complex. Even though he had this side of him that was really abusive and terrible, he had this other side of him that is extremely loyal and generous and loving and charismatic and funny, and all of these parts of him that are truly so beautiful. And I just decided that I was going to love him for that. And I was going to see him at his highest. And a couple of years ago, he was in the ICU and he was intubated, and everybody thought he was going to die. And he did not die. He has since had both of his legs amputated. from unregulated diabetes. But at that time when he was in the hospital, I kind of had this spiritual awakening where I really saw him as my child, as me, as his mother. That he was like, I saw him as a 4-year-old, all of his beauty, all of his innocence, all of his potential, all of his sweetness. And I just saw myself like rocking him and cradling him and loving him and giving him all of the things that he didn't have, all of the things that he likely needed in order to become the man that he could have been.
That's beautiful.
And in that, I truly forgave him. At the deepest part of my heart, I truly forgave him. And there was this level that I thought I had forgiven him before. And maybe there's even another level of forgiveness. But through that experience, my heart opened to him at such a level. And that when I experienced that, I realized that any of the pain, any of the things that I had wished to be different, because for a long time, I wished I'd had a father that was different. I wished I'd have a father that I could go to and talk to about real things, and he could give me advice, and he could see me as this grown up, solid, intelligent woman and relate to me on this different level. And all of that wanting for him to be different didn't change him. And it just put me in this state of wanting, in this state of void, in this state of not having. And in forgiving him, I realized that I could actually access more from him than I ever thought I could before. I could see more from him. I opened on this whole new level. And he's never, that's my kitty cat meowing in the background. He's never going to be any different than he is. So I get to show up for who he is now, who he is today, with who I am. We are who we are. How can I love him? Because he loves me. He does. He loves me to his ability to love. And I get to love him at my greatest ability. And not forgiving him only limits my ability to love. And exactly. I didn't want to limit that anymore.
So just thinking here, by you forgiving your father, how has it helped you in your own relationship with your husband?
That's an amazing question, actually, because I think that there has been a vast deepening that has occurred since that time in my life. It was interesting because it all happened at the same time that like Trump was coming into office, and I am liberal and I was really against Trump. And when he got into office, I had this like, I wanted to just, like, my husband was a man, you know, and it was just like, all men were just this terrible thing. And what's so interesting is that I, you know, through forgiving the masculine and through deepening my relationship with my partner, through forgiving my father and no longer holding those grievances against him, I feel like there was a quicker healing through that process as well, for me to accept all of the wounds of humanity. Not only have women been oppressed and repressed over time, but so have men. And for me to reject, you know, the masculine is only, again, rejecting my ability to love, my ability to be vulnerable, my ability to be seen and held and accepted at my core, right? And so for me to forgive and to see the limitations of both men and women allows me to access my husband and actually surrender into being loved and being cared for in such a deeper way.
I absolutely love that. And that is so incredibly true, because I can only, you know, even for myself, it's like, you know, my mother was extremely abusive, and my wife always told me, you need to forgive your mother. And I'm like, what is that really going to do? And I realized, yes, by forgiving the opposite sex parents, you know, for guys forgiving their mothers, of course, forgive both parents, but when you're married to someone, if you're a guy married to a woman or a woman married to a guy, by forgiving your mom or your father, that will create such a better relationship. Because I didn't trust my mother, and I realized, wow, I wasn't trusting my wife. And of course, there's no reason not to trust her, but I wasn't because of the trauma that went through my mother. So yes, forgiving our parents is so important. Not only does it help us, but it really can save our marriages as well, and our kids. I mean, it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. Forgiveness at the deepest level is really like extremely healing, right? That is like the opening to compassion. So compassion is like one of the most highest vibration experiences in the emotional range. And when we truly forgive, that is really the door to compassion, to being compassionate to another person's experiences, another person's imperfections, and the way that they may have hurt or betrayed you.
Exactly. And forgiving people is not easy by any means, but literally it's the best thing a person could ever do in their life. Really, really is.
And really, like that, forgiving somebody is not easy. I want to reframe that and say that it actually is, that it actually is easy, because it's really just a choice. And then when we feel those emotions come up again, because even if you forgive somebody, it doesn't mean that you're never going to be triggered by an experience that maybe is intertwined with that person again. But you get to choose over and over again. You get to take your power back from those experiences and choose to forgive them, and choose to have compassion, and choose to have compassion for yourself as well.
So what exactly did you do? How did you forgive your father?
Honestly, it was like a spiritual experience. It was this overwhelming sense of absolute love and compassion that came over me for him and for his little inner child. And all I wanted to do at that time was I was just singing to him at his bedside and imagining myself just cradling and rocking his little 4-year-old child. And for me, I didn't have to, it wasn't something that plagued me. I remember like being in therapy and in other like circles of women, and then saying, well, you really need to forgive. You really need to forgive your father for that, because I was stuck in this question of why. Like, well, why did this happen? And why did he do it? And why can't he claim it and just,
Yes.
own it? But the question of why really does not serve us. It can really get you stuck, because you might never, ever, ever understand why. How can you move through this? What tools can you use? What support is going to open the path for you to get from where you're at emotionally stuck now to get to freedom? Don't ever worry about why ever again. You may never understand why. How are you going to move from where you're at now to another place? There are lots of different ways and lots of different tools, and using any of those tools and taking any of those paths, opening any of those doors, starts with your choice to do it. Your choice to heal, your choice to be compassionate with yourself and with anybody that has abused you, and just making the choice and moving forward and making it over and over and over again.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, speaking of whys, there's no why. Like when I asked my mother why, she didn't even know why she did the things she does. It's like, yes, we get so stuck in a why. It is what it is. You just gotta let it go. Just gotta do it. So what's the number one piece of advice, or 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you would give someone who feels that they are broken?
Someone that feels they're broken. Well, if you feel that you're broken, you've probably got a lot of stories around, what's wrong with you and why life's not right. But I would say that you are here and you exist and you are completely unique. There is no other person like you on the planet, and there never will be again. And that you absolutely 100% have a purpose, and you are not broken. We cannot break. We are not broken human beings. Whatever you've experienced in your life, I truly believe that whatever painful experiences you have been served in your life, they are meant exactly and perfectly for you, for your soul's journey. So it is your time to rise up and figure out what that lesson is. So if it has to do with like sexual trauma, if it has to do with an abusive childhood, if it has to do with a relationship, somebody cheating on you and leaving you, or whatever it is, this is your opportunity. It's actually your opening, your ticket to becoming the person that you're meant to become. All of your challenges in life are meant for you to move through, overcome, and rise up and become better. That's what it's all about. There is no broken. There is no broken. There's only better.
I love it. So what's some great pieces of advice you'd like to give to people also who are listening to this episode right now?
I would say that this is about your voice and this is about your truth. And so anything that you feel shameful about, something that's happened to you, something that you've done, that you find forgiveness and compassion for yourself, that shame has no purpose in your life. There is no good thing that can come out of it. So if there's any hiding that you've ever done, I invite you to become 100% honest with yourself, with your past, with who you are, with who you want to become, with your desires, with your dreams, and that you become completely honest with yourself. And then you become honest with the people around you. Maybe you've got some apologies to make. Do it. Make it. Own your life. Own your truth. Own your story and claim your voice. Because if anything has served me in this life, like number one, full expression. Becoming fully expressed in all areas of your life. Even if that is anger. Find a safe place to express your anger so that you are not resisting it and pushing it down and having it explode and causing other issues and problems in your life. You need to become fully expressed in all areas that are calling for you to do so.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing, like anger is so extremely toxic. And, people who hold the anger, they don't realize that damages relationship with their kids, with their spouse, with their friends, with everybody. You got to get rid of the anger. It's extremely toxic.
It can be extremely toxic when you're pushing it down and then it bursts out. But if you just use it, anger can just clear the path. It's like a fire, right? It clears everything out of the way. And then everything can rejuvenate, a newness can come out of it. But if you are just resisting it and pushing it down because you're seeing it as this dark part of yourself that is not safe and not good, and you're pushing it down and you're not giving it a place to be seen, what is the anger really useful for? Go run a marathon, hit the gym, like do something because it wants to move. It is a force that is pushing you. So do not resist it. Use it. It is a powerful force to be harnessed in your life.
So, Kristina, you are absolutely amazing. And, it's incredible because, you've been through all these, you could say pretty tough situations in your life, but you've been able to transform this into an amazing gift where now you're able to serve women who've been in these situations and they're stuck. And it's beautiful because you've been in there and you're able to help them in such an incredible way. So for any woman who's listening to this right now, how can they find you online? How can they connect and how can they work with you? Because I'm sure so many are listening to like, oh my God, I love this lady. I want to work with her. How can they get hooked up with you?
So you can go to my website, which is Kristina with a K, KristinaCampbellCoaching.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there and you'll get some, free little goodies. You can also join my Facebook group if you want to be in a group, a sisterhood of women who are all supporting each other. And that is Sexual Freedom for Women Sisterhood, Sexual Freedom for Women Sisterhood Facebook group. And you can just apply or just click the invite and I'll let you in if you're a woman. It's for women only. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm not super active there, but you can find me there at Casey Starlight. That's Lite, Casey Starlight. And I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. So what exactly are some of the services that you offer women?
So right now I offer women one-on-one coaching, and I'm actually in the idea of brewing up a group program as well. So right now I offer one-on-one support for women to break through any of their sexual limitations and shame, inhibitions, anything that's holding them back, and general life coaching as well.
That is absolutely beautiful. Well, thank you so very much for your time. I really appreciate you being on the Power of Your Voice podcast. And you have an amazing voice.
I am so grateful to be on. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. Thank you. Johnny here. Thank you for listening to the Power of Your Voice podcast. I'd love to get your feedback on this episode and how it impacted you. If someone in your life could benefit from this episode, share it with them. Check out thepowerofyourvoice.com to read show notes, leave a comment on the blog page, and to stay updated on all future episodes, subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review. Thank you for your love and support.